You don't think more police make streets safer?
No, Joe, I'm a black woman in America. I do not always think that more police make streets safer. When you walk down the streets of Georgetown, you don't see a police officer on every corner, but you don't feel unsafe. So what is it about talking about places like Southeast D.C., right, Ward 8, if you will, that people say, well, we need more officers to make us safe? I think we have to rethink what safety means in America.
Well, you know, there have been black city council members in New York City, when people were talking about defunding the police, saying the people we represent are the people who need police officers the most, as safety officers in schools need police officers the most, so our children can walk from their homes to school without being stopped, 5-10 times by drug dealers or people that are going to assault them. I don't think this is an issue of black versus white. When you're talking about safety, there are a lot of black Americans who don't feel safe in their homes, in their neighborhoods. And when they hear people talking about defunding the police, it freaks them out. I'm not saying that's what you're saying.
Defund the police is not good. I never supported defund. I think you're making a good point, Joe. I want to be able to call the police in my neighborhood. When they come, I don't want them to think that I'm a suspect. But what we're talking about is that the President of the United States is saying that there is a crime emergency in Washington, D.C. An emergency can be anything that he says it is. So from his definition, maybe there is. The data would say otherwise. But the issue that people keep citing is about the young people, the carjackings, right? The kids running into a CVS and taking things out the CVS. That is juvenile crime. And so how are the police officers or the National Guard going to address the issue of juvenile crime? And until we start talking about the policy, let's talk about the crime bill that DC passed last year that could be strengthened, right? Let's talk about that. But Donald Trump is using rhetoric and playing on the real fears that some people have because of what they've seen on the news or maybe what they themselves have experienced. And
it's not what they've seen on the news. It's not what they...
You had David Drucker on earlier, and I think he hit the nail on the head, that it is perceived violence amplified by some actual real acts of violence. But the way I've heard D.C. being described this morning is like it's a city under siege, like it's a dangerous place, clutching your pearls. You got to keep your bag under your dress when you leave the house, and that's just not true. What we are talking about, though, is these instances of juvenile crime. That is what Jeanine Pirro came to the White House press briefing yesterday and zeroed in on. I was surprised I didn't hear Brian Schwab talk more about it. He mentioned the juvenile courts and the judges. But my concern is that the president is using instances of juvenile crime in the city of Washington, D.C. as a pretext for what I would describe as his authoritarian overreach. And because there is enough there for folks to say, oh, well, maybe it's not all that bad what Donald Trump is doing, just like there are people that said the same about immigration until the Marines were rolling down the streets of their city and ICE was snatching up their neighbors in neighborhoods that people have been there for years. There's just enough there for people to say, oh, well, maybe this isn't that bad, ignoring the fact that more police officers on the street are not going to fix the issue of juvenile crime. What about the policies? What about the laws? What about the judges? What about the policies of the Juvenile Assessment Center in Washington, D.C.? Where are the wraparound services? Jeanine Pirro talked about children getting let out, kids getting let out for arts and crafts. Okay, well, what are the real policies, the wraparound services to address what is happening with the juvenile justice system in Washington, D.C.? Is the National Guard and the military going to address that? I don't think so. So until we start talking about that, we are really adding to the fear mongering, in my opinion, and amping up the rhetoric when we should be tamping it down because Donald Trump is giving us rhetoric and not the reality.
Symone Sanders Townsend made Joe Scarborough look like a fool on MSNBC's Morning Joe on Tuesday, August 12, 2025. Now, this was all centered around Donald Trump's takeover of Washington, D.C.'s police department and sending in 800 National Guards troops. And this is all an effort to distract from the Epstein files and the demand from many Americans, including many MAGA Trumpsters to release the Epstein files. Joe Scarborough was basically saying that the solution to violence in Washington, D.C., and Washington, D.C. is 42% African-American, a total population of about 700,000 people, as well as the solution to youth violence is more police on the streets and hopefully goodwill from Donald Trump's takeover of the police department and sending in 800 National Guard troops. Symone Sanders Townsend checked Joe Scarborough on this, and many white people see African Americans as a group of people to be policed and not served, protected, and invested in. Now, D.C. Mayor Muriel Bowser defended the city of Washington, D.C.'s handling of crime amid an escalation of threats from Donald Trump to federalize the nation's capital. D.C. Mayor Muriel Bowser said, "We have spent over the last 2 years driving down violent crime in the cities, in this city, driving it down to a 30-year low. In fact, over the past year, we have decreased violent crime by 26%, and the year before that by 35%. TheGrio.com has a really good article dealing with this, and we posted this on our Facebook fan page, the African History Network, because we've been following this story very closely, even though I can't do videos as often as I would like. But if you check out this article here from TheGrio.com, DC Mayor Bowser pushes back against Trump's narrative on crime in the nation's capital. This is from August 11th, 2025. She breaks down the statistics here, and violent crime in Washington, D.C. is at a 30-year low. Now, Monday, August 11th, 2025, on Morning Joe, Joe Scarborough really did not want to acknowledge the significant drop in crime that we've seen in Washington, D.C. Tuesday morning, he acknowledged it some and said, you know, it goes up, it goes down some. He didn't still want to acknowledge a significant decline. And a lot of this is based upon white people's interpretation and perception of crime in a city where the largest population is made up of African Americans. Okay. So now what I find interesting is, so I'm going to show you a number of different articles here that show how Donald Trump is lying. Okay. I'm going to show you a number of different articles here that show how Trump is lying. And they knew that the So I'm going to show you a number of different articles here and show you evidence that shows that Donald Trump is lying. Okay. And all of this, once again, is an effort to distract from the Epstein files, distract from the big ugly bill, distract from the failing economy. Remember, 3 weeks ago, on Sunday, July 27, 2025, Donald Trump was calling for the prosecution of 5 African Americans. Okay, Barack Obama, Vice President Kamala Harris, Beyonce, Oprah Winfrey, and Reverend Al Sharpton. And all this was an attempt to distract from the Epstein files as well. So if we look here at this piece now, we know Trump and the Department of Justice had their press conference on Monday, August 11th, right? Well, if you look at this here, now this is from the Department of Justice website, justice.gov. And let me show you some evidence here, because January 3rd, 2025, the Department of Justice announced violent crime in Washington, D.C. hits a 30-year low. This is Friday, January 3rd, 2025. This is a press release. U.S. State's Attorney's Office, District of Columbia. This is at justice.gov. the official website of the U.S. Department of Justice. Okay. For immediate release, U.S. Attorney's Office, District of Columbia. Total violent crime for 2024 in the District of Columbia is down 35% from 2023 and is the lowest it has been in over 30 years, according to data collected by the Metropolitan Police Department and announced by U.S. State's Attorney Matthew M. Graves. Now, this was still under the Biden-Harris administration, okay? So then they break it down. In addition to the overall violent crime reduction, homicides are down 32%, robberies down 39%, armed carjackings are down 53%, assaults with a dangerous weapon are down 27% when compared with 2023 levels, with the district reporting the fewest assaults with dangerous weapons and burglaries in over 30 years. Okay. So read the rest of this, right? Now, if we dig deeper into this, there was a piece from, and I want to go to this next here. There was a piece from WSUA Channel 9, and rawstory.com picked up on this also. Okay, now this is from August 17th, 2025, and this is talking about the impact that Trump's takeover of Washington, D.C. is having on restaurants, and how restaurants have seen a huge decline in foot traffic and clientele, and they're losing money, right? Take a look at this. Reservations plunge across D.C. restaurants after Trump's police takeover, okay? Online reservations dropped more than 25% in the days following Trump's announcement that he was federalizing D.C. police, according to Open Table data. Now, what's more important here is that it talks about Ed Martin, okay? And it talks about interim U.S. attorney for the District of Columbia, Ed Martin. Trump announced the takeover of D.C.'s police on Monday to address what he described as rising crime. Okay, and we saw at his little press conference there on Monday, August 11th, he talked about bloodthirsty criminals, and he made Washington, D.C. seem like a war zone. Okay, but when you talk to people on the ground in Washington, D.C., people who live there, they say, yes, there's violence just like any big city, but it's nothing like Donald Trump explained. Okay, what he described as rising crime, although although Metro Police Department and FBI data show violent crime, pay attention to this, show violent crime have declined to 30-year lows, in the city. In April of 2025, pay attention to this, okay? In April of 2025, then interim U.S. attorney for Washington, D.C., Ed Martin Jr., who was appointed by Donald Trump, okay, who was nominated by Donald Trump, he credited Trump's first 100 days in office with a 25% drop in violent crime in the city. Because violent crime in Washington, D.C., 2025 numbers over 2024 numbers is down 26%. And this is on top of a 35% drop in violent crime for 2024 over 2023. So here you have interim U.S. attorney for Washington, D.C., Ed Martin, crediting Trump's first 100 days in office with a 25% drop in violent crime. But all of a sudden, crime is so bad in Washington, D.C., that Trump has to send in the National Guard and take over the police department. Okay, this is all a smokescreen. This is all a distraction. Okay, this is an authoritarian move, and also many people think this is a precursor because Donald Trump said in his press conference, he said that he would, he talked about other cities, and these are cities that have high African-American populations. He talked about sending in the National Guard, possibly taking over cities like Chicago and Los Angeles, California, Oakland, California, Baltimore, things like this. Cities with high African-American populations and with African-American mayors as well. And a lot of people think this is a precursor to Donald Trump's authoritarian moves he's going to try with other cities. And we know that he campaigned in 2024 on implementing the Insurrection Act, okay, of 1807, the Insurrection Act of 1807. Okay, now, if people like Joe Scarborough, and if people really want to continue to bring down crime and improve quality of life in Washington, D.C., okay, and people like Donald Trump as well, why did Donald Trump cut $811 million in federal grants that are designed to reduce crime? Okay. And these are grants largely from the Biden-Harris administration. So I posted this on Facebook, and this was a segment from Ana Cabrera's show on MSNBC. She comes on 10 a.m. Monday through Friday on MSNBC. She did a segment after Trump's takeover, and this is a screenshot of that. For all this rhetoric about cleaning up crime, what Trump didn't mention was he cut nearly $1 billion in grants for violence prevention and police training, including $150 million for combating gun violence in cities like Washington, D.C. It was $158 million in community violence intervention grants. I'm going to show you an article from Reuters.com in just a minute that talks about this. But Trump ended $811 million in Department of Justice grants, including victim programs, and police training. He cut more than half of all funding for gun violence prevention in cities including Chicago and Washington, D.C. And these were grants from the Biden-Harris administration. A federal court blocked the White House from cutting $11 billion in public health, including addiction and mental health programs. Okay, $11 billion in public health funding. Okay, so if Trump is so concerned about violence in Washington, D.C. and other cities, especially cities with high African-American populations, now he's not talking about sending the National Guard in any cities with Republican governors like Texas. Okay, he's not talking about that either. These are only cities that have Democratic governors, and 3 of them, Maryland, California, and Illinois, have Democratic governors who will probably be presidential contenders in 2028. Gavin Newsom in California, Wes Moore in Maryland, and J.B. Pritzker in Illinois. Okay, so pay attention to that also. All right, now, if we look at this article here from, this is from Reuters.com, okay? This deals with the Trump administration / federal funding for gun violence prevention. Okay, Trump administration / federal funding for gun violence prevention. This is from July 29, 2025 by Bianca Flowers for Reuters.com. And it talks about here the Trump administration has terminated more than half of all of federal funding for gun violence prevention programs in the U.S., cutting $158 million in grants that have been directed to groups in cities like New York City, Los Angeles, Chicago, Washington, D.C., and Baltimore. These are all cities that Donald Trump mentioned having high crime rates and crime out of control in those cities. And he said we're going to have to look at going into those cities also. Of the 145 community violence intervention, CVI, community violence intervention grants, totaling more than $300 million awarded through the U.S. Department of Justice, 69 grants were abruptly terminated in April 2025, according to government data analyzed by Reuters. The elimination of community violence intervention programs, CVI, is part of a broader rollback at the department's grant issuing office of justice programs, which terminated 365 million grants valued at $811 million in April of 2025. This is what the Trump administration did. This impacted a range of public safety and victim services programs. Okay, now these were grants from the Biden-Harris administration. Okay, and these grants were originally funded from the 2022 bipartisan Safer Communities Act bill that was passed by the Biden-Harris administration. Now, a DOJ official told Reuters the gun violence grants were eliminated because they no longer effectuate the program's goals or agency's priorities. Really? What are the Department of Justice priorities under the Trump administration, where you don't want to continue community violence intervention programs, okay, and programs that have been proven to bring down violence in these communities and combat violence? Thousands of Office of Justice programs grants are under review, the official said, and are being evaluated, among other things, on how well they support law enforcement and combat violent crime. The majority of the community violence intervention grants, now this is the real problem right here, okay? This is something from the Biden-Harris administration. A lot of people don't know this. A lot of people who said we didn't get a George Floyd Justice and Policing Act don't realize that there were policies that Biden-Harris were able to get in place that were things that the people in the Black Lives Matter movement were asking for. And they were asking for funding to deal with preventing crimes, to help reduce crimes, as opposed to only just more police officers on the street. The majority of the community violence intervention grants were originally funded through the 2022 bipartisan Safer Communities Act and a part of a push by former President Joe Biden to stem the rise of gun violence in America, including establishing the first White House Office for Gun Violence Prevention. Okay, the first White House Office for Gun Violence Prevention. Now, Trump has shut down the White House Office for Gun Violence Prevention. That office was dismantled on day one of Trump taking office, said former Deputy Director of the office, Greg Jackson Jr. Now, if Donald Trump is so concerned about gun violence prevention, and if he's so concerned about the inner cities and he wants people to be safe, why did he cut $811 million in federal grants that's focused on bringing down gun violence, on reducing violent crimes, on making streets safer. And why did he close the White House office for gun violence prevention if he's so concerned about violent crime? Now, keep in mind, Donald Trump did not even send in the National Guard on January 6th when he incited an insurrection. And the insurrectionists were attacking 140 police officers for 187 minutes. Donald Trump didn't do anything. He didn't send in the National Guard then. Then in 2024, he campaigned on giving a pardon to those very same people, many of them convicted on felonies. Many of them, you had hundreds convicted on felonies, hundreds convicted of assaulting police officers. And then on his first day in office, January 20th, 2025, he gives a pardon to almost 1,500 of those insurrectionists. But he's for law and order and protecting the police. Really? No, this is white supremacy and racism. That's what this is. This is pushing white supremacy and racism. Okay, now back to the article here. Prior to the Biden era funding, most gun violence prevention programs were funded on the state level. Prior to the Biden era funding, most gun violence prevention programs were funded on the state level. Okay, now the grant supported a wide range of community violence intervention programming to prevent shootings, such as training outreach. And let me go to that here. Just a second here. Where is that? Okay. The grant supported a wide range of funding supported a wide range of CVI programming to prevent shootings, such as training outreach teams to de-escalate and mediate conflict, social workers to connect people to services and employment, and hospital-based programs for gun violence victims. These are some of the things that the community violence intervention grants were doing. We've seen these grants have a big impact in reducing violent crime here in the city of Detroit, where I live. Okay, so take a look at this piece here from Reuters.com. And this deals with the Trump administration cutting $811 million in community violence intervention grants. Some of these grants were benefiting Washington, D.C., but Trump wants to talk about violent crime and bloodthirsty criminals, and wants to talk about violent youth and things like this. And he campaigned on possibly taking over Washington, D.C., but the impetus for this, what he used was when the staffer, the Doge staffer that goes by the name Big Balls, was carjacked a couple of weeks ago in Washington, D.C. So he used that as the pretext to come in and do exactly what he's doing. Now, the really interesting part in all of this is when Donald Trump did his press conference on Monday, August 11th, to announce the takeover of Washington, D.C., MSNBC and CNN called out the lies he was telling in real time. Now, we posted this article on my Facebook fan page, The African History Network, and my personal page, Michael Imhotep. This is from rawstory.com. Trump busted in real time as networks graphics shoot down DC crime claims. Trump busted in real time as Networks Graphics shut down DC crime claims. So this is from August 11th, 2025. And if we take a closer look at this piece here, you see Donald Trump in the White House, and they showed, this is from MSNBC, they showed the crime statistics as he's standing there lying. Decreases in violent crime rates. Overall violent crime in the U.S. is down 4.5%. In Washington, D.C. is down 26%. Homicide rates in the U.S. are down 14.9%. Washington, D.C. down 12%. Robberies in the U.S. are down 8.9%. Washington, D.C. down 28%. I guess robbery at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue is up 100% since Donald Trump has returned to office. But they talk about, read this article here because CNN did fact checking on this, and it just exposes more of the lies that Trump is telling. And CNN put the number for the previous year at 2004 was highlighted at 35% drop in violent crime in Washington, D.C. over 2023. And Donald Trump talked about our capital city has been overtaken by violent gangs and bloodthirsty criminals. You're talking about on January 6th it was taken over? Because it's not taken over now. Yes, there is crime that takes place. Yes, there are crime amongst youth, and in summertime also. So certain crimes, you're going to see a spike during the summertime when school is out. Roving mobs of wild youths, drugged out maniacs, and homeless people. And we're not going to let it happen anymore. We're not going to take it. This is what he said. So check out this piece also. Now, in addition to the $811 million in crime prevention grants that the Trump administration has cut out, we know the House of Representatives cut out, we know Congress cut out $1 billion from the Washington, D.C.'s annual budget. So if we look at this piece here from NBC Channel 4, NBC Channel 4, Washington, D.C., this deals with D.C. mayor works to reduce impact of $1.1 billion in spending cuts. D.C. mayor works to reduce impact of $1.1 billion in spending cuts. Okay. And this is from April 14th, 2025. And it says, while the D.C. government prepares to make hundreds of millions of dollars in cuts that likely mean layoffs and reductions in services, Mayor Muriel Bowser announced Monday she's invoking a little-known law allowing the district to avoid more than $600 million of the $1.1 billion in cuts included in Congress's continuing resolution to keep the federal government running. Okay. The move still leaves the district with about $410 million to cut by September. All right. So check this out also. Okay. So they're cutting the budget by $1.1 billion. That's money that can be used for crime prevention. That's money that can be used for mental health services, for job creation, for summer jobs, for training, skills trade training, all different types of things like this. But you have to understand that you only protect what you respect. You only protect what you respect. And Donald Trump Judge Jeanine Pirro, Caroline Levitt, all these people, they don't respect African-American youth. They don't respect African Americans. They don't think that these are people who should be invested in. They think that these are people who should be policed, and their policies and actions follow their thought process. Your policies and how you vote shows me what you actually value. It's one thing to say something, but when you put forth policy, right, that actually shows me what you believe. So your vote shows me what you value. Now, there was a follow-up piece from the New York Times also that dealt with this as well. Let me try to go back to that New York Times piece here. DC Mayor Muriel Bowser unveils budget plan aimed at easing pain of congressional cuts. And this is from May 27th, 2025. This is from the New York Times. Let's pull this one up also so you can check this out. DC Mayor unveils budget plan aimed at easing pain of congressional cuts. Local officials announced trims, spending freezes, and other fixes to blunt the effects of a $1 billion budget cut that Congress forced on the city. So the $1 billion, that's what Symone Sanders was talking about when she was educating Joe Scarborough on Morning Joe. Now, this piece is from May 27th, 2025. So check this one out as well. Okay, after waiting nearly 3 months for Congress to fix what even many of its own members agreed was a mistake that left Washington, D.C. facing a surprise $1.1 billion budget cut. City officials announced on Tuesday a plan to deal with the sizable shortfall on its own. At a public budget presentation, Mayor Muriel Bowser said that her administration would not need to lay off workers or make substantial cuts to municipal services, as the city had feared might be necessary. Instead, local officials were able to use a 2009 federal budgeting law to boost this year's spending by hundreds of millions of dollars. They closed the rest of the gap by temporarily freezing new hiring and making piecemeal cuts to the thousands of contracts, grants, and other expenditures across dozens of city agencies. Now, the Metropolitan Police Department that services Washington, D.C., they are down by about 800 officers. And she said that she needs to hire these officers, and this will actually also help them save money because they're paying so much money in overtime right now. So check this article out as well. Now, something else that the Trump administration did was they cut $1 billion in school mental health grants. And this is something I was pointing out on Roland Martin Unfiltered when I was on Friday, August 15th. And we were short on time and Roland cut me off because I was also going to talk about the $811 million in crime prevention grants that were cut. Now, when we spoke with Mayor Barbara Lee out of Oakland, California, I brought this up to her, and we're going to get that clip. We're going to post that clip on my social media platforms as well, so you can see the question that I posed to her, because I asked her to talk about how those grants were helping Oakland, California, and help them reduce crime. And she said they actually were. Okay, ABC News has this piece here from May 1st, 2025. Trump administration discontinues $1 billion in school mental health grants. Trump administration discontinues $1 billion in school mental health grants. The department said the programs were not advancing administration priorities. So they're saying that these grants don't advance the Trump administration's priorities. That's the same thing they said about cutting the $811 million in crime prevention grants. So you have to ask yourself the question, what are the priorities of this 34-time convicted felon? Now, this article is from May 1st, 2025 by Arthur Jones II. The Trump administration will not renew Biden-era grants worth $1 billion that were aimed at boosting mental health services in schools, a Department of Education spokesperson confirmed to ABC News. These grants are intended to improve American students' mental health by funding additional mental health professionals in schools and on campuses. Deputy Assistant Secretary for Communications Madison Biderman wrote in a statement to ABC News, quote, instead, under the deeply flawed priorities of the Biden administration, grant recipients use the funding to implement race-based actions, okay, like recruiting quotas in ways that have nothing to do with mental health and could hurt the very students the grants are supposed to help. So this is one of the tactics from this Trump administration to root out anything that they claim is race-based, okay, and anything that they claim deals with race or anything like that, or DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion, affirmative action. They're going through and cutting all of that out. Anything that remotely benefited African Americans, they're cutting all these programs out. The decision comes as the Trump administration takes sweeping action to eliminate diversity, equity, and inclusion programs and alleged racism and alleged racial discrimination practices in schools. However, multiple courts have blocked efforts to ensure schools certify compliance with the administration's demands. And one of the priorities of the Trump administration is to deal with white grievance. One of the priorities is to deal with white grievance, and they make the argument that white people are the real victims of discrimination and racism, and not people of color, especially African Americans. This is one of the initiatives of the Trump administration, and this was laid out in Project 2025 as well. If we look further in this piece here, it says the American Federation of Teachers, Randy Weingarten, called it a direct attack on the safety and well-being of children. Quote, they may not have agreed on everything, but Congress secured $1 billion in bipartisan mental health grants, to help kids better understand themselves and the world around them. Weingarten wrote in a statement. The benefits were obvious. Now, with the stroke of a pen, that halting progress has been wiped away, even as the president and his allies insist that improving mental health is the only way to fix the gun violence epidemic. So you want to talk about gun violence in Washington, D.C. You want to talk about gun violence among youth. You want to talk about bloodthirsty gangs, things of this nature. Okay, but then you cut $1 billion in mental health grants, and Donald Trump and his allies insist that improving mental health is the only way to fix the gun violence epidemic. Because see, they say the guns are not the problems. All right, so check out that article also from ABC News. All right, so hopefully you can read. Hopefully you go through and read all these articles. I know it may take some time to do it, but this is what we're dealing with here. This is why we have to fight this, and this is what I was warning people about in 2024, going back to 2023, because I was talking about Project 2025 and 2023. Okay. I'm historian and national political commentator Michael Imhotep, founder of the African History Network, host of the African History Network show. For those that don't know, okay, it is Tuesday, August 19th, 2025. Be sure to register for my new online history course. Visit our website, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. This class is on Saturdays, 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and it's going to start Saturday, August 6th. 2025. Go to our website, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com, and scroll down. This is African empires, the Moors, and the transatlantic slave trade, 5000 BC to 1800 AD. This is a 10-week online course. We're actually going to start on Saturday, September 6th. Click right here to register. Classes on sale, $80. We do the sessions live. All the sessions are archived and recorded. You can go back and watch it anytime. And one of the things we'll talk about are various African empires, whether we talk about ancient Nubia or the Kush Empire, ancient Kemet, ancient Egypt, Great Zimbabwe, Carthage, the Nok culture. We're going Meroe, Axum. We're going through and looking at history, thousands of years of history, various African empires, and then also we'll deal with the transatlantic slave trade and how it evolved. So we'll look at history from 5000 BC through 1800 AD. You'll get 5 of my lectures in digital download format free with this. And then also be sure to download our class lesson plan here as well. Click on the download button to download our class lesson plan. And visit my website, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. Our social media handles are here as well. And you can email me through the website. Just click on contact the African History Network. So this class is PG-13. You can use this content with your children. Also, I don't do a lot of cursing or anything like that. It's very visual. There are 80 to 100 articles that we reference in the class. I show you the articles on the screen. The 15 books that we reference. You don't have to buy any of the books. We show you the books we show you the pages of the books on the screen as well. And there are 200 slides in the class also. Okay. So I have a PowerPoint presentation, the video clips that we show, excerpts of interviews I've done with some of our historians. I've been teaching this class on and off since 2017, so it has evolved immensely since then. Also, you can support the African History Network through PayPal and Cash App. We have the information right on the homepage of my website. If you scroll down, $ the AHN show through Cash App, and through PayPal, paypal.me/the AHN show. This is our Cash App. Tag $ the AHN show, SHOW. When you go to it, it'll say Michael and show my picture there. Okay, these are some fake African History Network Cash App accounts that have been stealing money from us. And I put our tag right here. Here's our link to our Cash App, QR code. Okay, so you can support us there if you want to donate support us $5, $10, $15, $25, $50, $100, whatever it is. It definitely helps us keep doing the research, stay on the air, pay some of the bills, and broadcast the Sunday night show also. And here's our link for PayPal, paypal.me/the AHN show. Okay. All right. So look, we have to get out of here. Remember, at the African History Network, we focus on educating, empowering, and inspiring people of African descent throughout the diaspora and around the world, because right now it's correct wrong behavior. It's not over till we win. We're kind of forever.